Hello, sir. You're on mute, I think. Are you on mute? No, you're not on mute. Why am I not hearing you? Audio. Default. Good morning. How are you? Okay, hold on. For whatever reason, my microphone doesn't want to work. Why doesn't it want to? Kevin, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
There you go. Okay. If you have a PowerPoint you would like to test, I have it on share for multiple. So,
Okay. I will try to share my screen.
all right. You're probably getting to be an old pro to this too.
Well, yes and no.
I can see your
Can you
slides.
see? Super.
Yeah, the things we've had to learn over the past few years.
Yeah.
Oh, Kent, I'm sure you wish you were there. Wherever that background may be.
Were you visiting with me?
I was saying whatever your background is, I'm sure you wish you were there.
Well, about 3 weeks ago.
California.
Yeah, Palm Desert.
That's nice.
So I had to find one. I was trying to find a sunset real quick, but I couldn't find one. Yeah, so Kevin, I flew out on Allegiant and we came back on United. It was a wonderful experience all the way around.
Good. Glad to hear that. Allegiant has given us a lot of nonstop destinations. A number of them are seasonal, of course, but we're delighted that they are now a crew base, and that just opens up a lot more city pairs, a lot more nonstop connections for us.
Nice shirt, Kelsey.
Thank you.
I got mine.
Gotta show my pride.
I got
Yeah.
mine
Are you
on.
going to the game?
Kelsey will be.
Am I going to the game? The answer is yes. Are you going to the game?
I am not, but my wife is.
Good.
We were at the game Saturday. That was fun.
That was a fun game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like they were kind of dangling a carrot in the first half.
Oh, my word.
And I'm like, no way. And then we kind of took it away, but it was good. Yeah. So tonight is, if they win tonight, they're Big 12 champions.
Oh, they are the
So-
Big 12. Okay.
Big 12 champions. So if they win, knock on wood, there will be confetti, t-shirts, hats, nets being cut down. And then on top of that, it's senior night. So
Who are
be
the seniors?
prepared for a big celebration.
Who are the seniors? Who are the?
Morgan,
Okay.
Kane, Maddie, Fred, Ashley Jones is on the fence. So I think they're recognizing her tonight. Because technically she is a senior, but she does still have eligibility to come back if she chooses. So yeah, fun group. Very fun group.
Yeah.
Karen, are you going?
No, I'll be cheering on with my feet up and my glass of wine.
I love that.
Deb Fenley bought 100 tickets.
Yeah.
And is distributing them so people can go to the game tonight.
There were several people. I saw somebody buy, I thought if you get 10, it was only $30. And they bought several I don't know how many tickets, and they were giving them to the Boys and Girls Club so that some of those kiddos could go.
Yeah, if you buy over 20 tickets, they're only $1.
Yeah. Very cheap.
And then if you just wanted to go tonight, it's only $5.
Yeah, it's a great, I mean, and the entertainment value is incomparable.
Yeah.
Yep. And for the Hawkeyes, they've got Caitlin back maybe for 2 years. They've done very well this year too.
Yeah,
Oh my
they
gosh.
have.
I won't. I know I'm being recorded. Aren't they fun to watch?
They are. They're a good team.
Caitlin Clark. My goodness. Yeah.
Well, we actually, UNI, Iowa State. State of Iowa has been blessed this year with all 3 very good teams.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even Drake started out.
And fingers crossed, if we continue to do well, we'll be hosting the NCAAs, hopefully.
Yeah, true.
I can't imagine how we wouldn't.
I know. I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah,
Now
well, I just did.
they're going to want to have the crowd. So I think they should have us host it.
Yeah.
Given our attendance.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So otherwise than that, everybody have a good weekend. Get out and enjoy the nice weather.
I'm ready to have that every day.
I still saw people with flip-flops on about with 30-degree weather, but sunshine, so crazy.
Oh yeah, and so Campus Town, I live in Campus Town, and that with the sun being out, I think it gave all the students permission to be playing yard games. So there was tons of people with flip-flops on, no shirts. I mean, any excuse as a college student to take your shirt off, I guess. No shirts, yard games. It was fun to see.
Good to see people kind of getting back to normal.
I know.
Hey. So Kelsey, how's your pupper dog coming?
She's doing pretty good. She has limited accidents now, which is good. We're in the biting stage, and it's trying to convince the kids that she's not mean, but she's just a puppy and her teeth hurt. So that's kind of the battle right now, is the nipping.
Well,
And her teeth are so sharp.
puppy's teeth are very sharp.
Very sharp, very, very sharp. Well, it is 12:01, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the February 28th meeting of the Rotary Club of Ames. If you are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's go ahead and remain standing. I think it's no surprise that it's a tragic and sad time for Ukraine and the people of Ukraine and the people of the world. And I would like to share Rotary International's post, just part of their post from over the weekend. Today, our thoughts are with our fellow Rotary members and others in Ukraine coping with these tragic events. Rotary will do everything in its power to bring aid, support, and peace to this region. So at this time, let's just take a minute to keep them in our thoughts. Thank you. Guests and visiting Rotarians, thank you so much for tuning in today. At this time, Louis will sing our welcome song.
Yes, welcome to all you out there in Zoom land. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
Thank you.
Principal.
That was
Thank her.
wonderful, Louis. Thank you for
He's stepping down.
your voice.
The Des Moines
And
Mass
now
Superintendent
I would like
of the
to
Des Moines School
invite,
System stepping down.
somebody is not on mute. If you guys could
Takes a
all mute
decision and
your,
the pastors have to have something else to say, and
what is
so
that?
they're not.
Who is that talking? Thank you. If everyone else could just mute their microphone so we could give full attention to our speaker and to Kent. At this time, I would like to invite Kent to the screen to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Kelsey. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate our special guest today, Kevin Foley. Kevin joined the Des Moines International Airport team in June of '08 as its properties administrator, transitioning to deputy aviation director in January of '09, and then to the assistant executive director in 2011. He accepted the position of executive director in February of '14. And prior to joining the airport, Mr. Foley served as an associate professor of aviation for the University of Dubuque. His professional experience also includes several key management roles with the Dubuque Regional Airport and a stint as a corporate pilot. Kevin possesses a Master of Business Administration degree, as well as a Bachelor of Science degree in aviation management. He's a certified flight instructor and a multi-engine commercial pilot. And whoever asks the most interesting question will beg and steal from Kevin to see if they might be able to catch a ride with him sometime. Kevin, it is a pleasure to introduce you as our special speaker today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. As I tell folks, I never pass up an opportunity to promote the airport, so I very much appreciate the invitation. And I'm going to try to share my screen here. It worked earlier, so I'm hoping it still does. And can somebody tell me, are we sharing? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
We can see your
We
screen.
are.
It's there. It's perfect now.
Super. Appreciate that. Well, Des Moines Airport Authority, we market it as Iowa's airport, and there's a number of reasons that we do. We are the largest airport in the state of Iowa. We have 65% of all of Iowa's commercial air traffic, and a little over 50% of all the air cargo traffic. We are independent from the city of Des Moines. We've been an airport authority since 2011. So the board, the 5-person board that I report to, is an independent board. However, the city of Des Moines does appoint, the city council does appoint the board, the 5-person board. But once appointed, they are autonomous, and we are, for the most part, completely separate from the city, with the exception of we have a services agreement for law enforcement with the Des Moines Police Department, and that way we don't have to train or hire our own law enforcement folks. We are not supported by property taxes at all. We do receive federal funding, and that comes from a trust fund. It's the Airport and Airways Trust Fund, and that trust fund is funded by excise taxes on ticket tax, international flights are taxed, aviation fuel is taxed. In total, there's 6 areas that are taxed, and that is what funds the Airport and Airways Trust Fund, of which we receive funding every year from that trust fund. The airport is a gateway and hub for commercial activity in the state of Iowa. And we did an economic impact study back in 2014. At that time, our economic impact to the state was $644 million in total. There's a quote there at the bottom of the screen that came from the consultants that did this study. It's Des Moines International Airport is a critical economic catalyst, and can't see the rest of it, and important to the transportation resources that connects Central Iowa's residents and businesses to the world, and that's very true. We are Iowa's connection to the world. We are in the process right now of updating our terminal programming document. Back in 2014, we also did a study that reviewed the existing terminal and gave us what's called a terminal area forecast. That terminal area forecast is simply a projection of passengers coming through the terminal on into the future, and it went all the way out to 2042, and then estimated or gauged the capacity of our existing facilities to accommodate those passengers. Since the pandemic, we have been recovering. We are today running at about 90 to 95% of 2019 levels. And of course, in 2019, that was a record year for passengers for us. Our 2021 total passenger traffic was about 25% of 2019 levels. And when we compare that to the US, we're much higher. The estimate, the US being down in total between 35 and 40% from 2019. But the graph off to the side there is the future schedules here at Des Moines, and that's the schedule of seats coming in on out into July. And you can see the blue line there that it is much higher than it was back in 2019. So the airlines are considering, at least here in Des Moines, a fairly rapid recovery. The consultant putting this together suggested that we may see or exceed 2019 levels in the second half of 2022. And that's only if business travel comes back. Our travel today is mostly leisure. We know that we have business travel starting to come back, but the vast majority of our travel coming in and out of Des Moines today is leisure. But if business comes back with the same tenacity that leisure travel came back, we will far exceed our 2019 passenger levels. One of the reasons for our growth is the growth in central Iowa. The MSA population growth was 2 times the US during the past 10 years. If you look between 2010 and 2020, the blue there being Des Moines MSA's growth versus the United States. And in going forward, it slows down, but we're still projected to grow 33% faster than the US in those years between 2020 and 2040. And if you saw the last census, you saw that Iowa did in fact grow over this last census, but the vast majority of that growth was in the populated areas, the NSA areas of Des Moines and Cedar Rapids, basically the Cedar Rapids Iowa City corridor and the Des Moines Ames corridor is where the majority of that growth came. I mentioned the terminal area forecast, or what we call TAF. In aviation, we like to talk in acronyms so that people don't understand what we're talking about. But so the TAF, looking at the black line was the TAF that was established back in 2018. The blue line is what happened up to that vertical blue line, and then the terminal area forecast thereafter. And you can see that we're forecast to grow much faster today than what we were previously. In fact, our enplanements, and it's important that we know the difference between enplanements and total passengers. Enplanements would be those folks getting on airplanes. Total passengers would be passengers getting on or getting off airplanes coming through the terminal. But we were originally forecast to be at about 2 million in 2042, 2 million enplanements. The new forecast has us at 2.5 enplanements in 2042. So if you double that, that's an additional 1 million passengers coming through the terminal. You always hope that for every passenger that got on an airplane, one gets off. So you can basically just double those numbers. In 2018, we did an airport catchment analysis. You may hear it called a market study. You could also hear it called a leakage study. Those are some of the terms in the industry that are used. And this study was completed as of the second quarter of 2018. So it's a little bit dated because of the pandemic here, but it's the most recent information we have. And one of the things that just jumped out at me in this 120-page report was that 57% of our passengers come from within a 90-mile radius of Des Moines. Those are what we would call local passengers, or they Des Moines, they originate from right here in the state of Iowa. But 42% or 43% of our passengers are visitors. They're coming into Iowa to do business or for leisure purposes, and then they turn around and depart again. Of course, the Ames area generates a lot of those visitors. Our local passengers, those that are coming from within that 90-mile radius, we could track them by zip codes. This is a little bit big brotherish. It's kind of scary if you think about it. But if you think about how you buy tickets today, you go online through Google or some other search engine, and you track the flights that you want, you buy them, and then you give your credit card, and they can track the zip code on that credit card. When we first started doing this and they told me how they were doing it, it gave me some pause, but then I remembered that everybody else is doing it, so we might as well. But you can see by zip code, our largest users are those in the suburbs of Des Moines. And you get all the way down here to Des Moines number 10 before you hit the Des Moines zip code. Using it. Ames is number 13. Ames in total generated 16,622 passengers using Des Moines. Passengers from the Ames area in total though was 24,000 passengers. So that gave Des Moines almost a 70% share of those passengers, or what we call our leakage. People using other airports was about 31% of the Ames passengers using other airports. And then specific airports that were tracked through this study were Kansas City, Omaha, and Minneapolis. And if you are leaving from Ames, especially on an international flight, it could make sense to drive up to Minneapolis. Or there's other airports around it that those 30% could be traveling to as well. There's 3 pages of that study, and so it goes out quite a ways. And again, it pretty well encompasses the 90-mile radius that I referenced as our market. The radius around Des Moines is what we anticipate should be our capture area. This black dotted line across here represents 2019 passenger traffic. This study was generated back in 2017. This is part of the study that came out of 2017 terminal programming. But it analyzed all the specifics of passenger processing and measured that against the terminal. You can see that we weren't supposed to reach 3 million passengers until 2027 in the original terminal area forecast. And we just fell short of that in 2019. We had 2,900,000 and I believe 190 passengers. So just about 80,000 passengers short of reaching the 3 million mark. But we're in the red all the way across, whether you're talking about restrooms, the hold rooms, which is the area where people wait to board a plane, the baggage systems inbound and outbound, and so on. The Allegiant base opened up in 2021, and in 2021 they announced 5 new routes listed there: San Diego, Portland, Houston, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Springs. So far in 2022, a new route that they've announced is Orange County, which will start, I believe, on the 14th of April. Now, Allegiant typically doesn't fly every day to any destination, and some of those routes are seasonal. But it does increase the opportunities of nonstop flights for people out of Des Moines here. This chart, I know, is the numbers there are small, but it just shows back in 2009 all the way up through 2021 what our passenger traffic looked like. The orange are the in-plane passenger numbers. The blue are the number of seats coming in and out of Des Moines. And then the green is the percent of change as compared to 2009. That's not year-over-year change. Everything reverts back to 2009. But you can see from 2009 through 2019, we had a 67% increase in our passenger traffic. Of course, fast forward to April of 2020, and you can see the rapid decrease there of our passenger traffic, and the climb back such that today we're running, as I said, about 90 to 95% of those 2019 levels. This is our nonstop map. As it exists today, we have 29 nonstop destinations today. With that 67% passenger growth over the last 10 years, the facilities are terribly strained, especially during our peak times. The airlines today are continually adjusting schedules as well, such that we still have our primary peak time, which is that early morning departure from the first flight out of here is is between 5 and 5:30, and then on through till about 7:30. But all the aircraft at that time are going one way. They're all departing. Aviation functions like geese. They all arrive and depart like a flock of geese do. And that's our biggest peak. With the Allegiant arrival, with the crew base arrival, they have spread out other peaks throughout the day. They've increased some of the other peaks that we experienced, but they also use the terminal to a greater degree in those off-peak periods. And that helps tremendously when we're pushing passengers through the terminal to have gates that are used throughout the rest of the day. It increases passenger traffic without increasing those peaks. Our main concern today is aircraft parking around the terminal overnight. The gates are full. We have 21 airplanes on the gates overnight here. And then we have 5 remote parking spots, which are spots that they're not sitting on a gate, but they are up around the terminal area here. And an airline will have to launch a flight, then go tow that airplane up to the gate to launch the second flight. That's not uncommon at airports around the country. But what's concerning is that we only have 5 of those spots. And right now, 1 or 2 of those spots are used every night, mostly by Allegiant, but they are used every night. And so we've only got 3 spots left, and we continue to court the airlines. I can't tell the airlines what to fly, when to fly, or where to fly, but we do court them. We try to entice them to provide service to Des Moines here. And we have a couple of airlines that are looking at us. I will tell you that if it weren't for the pandemic, Alaska Air said that they would have been in Des Moines. When we visited with them back in February of 2020, before the pandemic really hit, they told us that they would be here in Des Moines by the fall of 2021. Of course, the pandemic has postponed all of that. And the other one that's looking at us seriously is Sun Country. Now, you never know for sure if they're coming until you see them here on the ground. But those are the 2 that are looking at us, and we're concerned whether we have enough parking space if they do say that they're coming. What's on the screen right now is an overlay of the terminal project itself. And if you've been to the airport in the last several months, the red area there down in the lower left is the new entrance. The entrance and the exit are co-located now all at one stoplight. That's one reason for relocating the entrance. The other reason is the old entrance. If you weren't familiar with the airport, as soon as you pulled on the airport, you had to start making decisions. Do I go left down Duck Pond Road? Do I go right into the Signature? And then you just went maybe 20 yards further. And do I want to pull into the parking here, whether it's the long-term or the hourly parking? Do I want to go there? Do I want to go in front of the terminal? Do I want to try to find economy parking? So the decision points with the new entrance will be greatly spread out for those people who aren't familiar with the airport. And we do have a lot of passengers coming through today that have not flown for a long time and maybe only fly once a year. So again, there are a lot of passengers coming through that aren't familiar with the airport. The pink area there, or magenta area, is phase 2 and 3 of that entrance road. That has been bid and will start construction in April, or as soon as weather breaks in April. That loop down in the lower right will be the new entrance to the parking garage, which is depicted there in orange. The parking garage is under design right now, and we anticipate starting construction in 2023 on that garage, and it will be a 2-year project. And once that's completed, we are down to the terminal itself, which is depicted there in green. That is where the funding gap exists. We will fund out of our own revenues the parking garage construction. We do have what's called a RISE grant for part of the road construction. Part of that's our own revenue. And when we get to the terminal itself, that's where we need help on funding. This is an artist's rendering of what the entrance and the road will look at as you enter. This is pretty accurate. We are thankful to the Greater Des Moines Art Foundation. They have put on permanent loan this art, which is named Liftoff, and it was from Alice Aycock, who is a world-renowned artist who designed and constructed it. And again, it's on permanent loan from the Greater Des Moines Art Foundation. Going on phase 2 and 3, you see off to the right there where that lane splits. That is the start of that loop that I talked about. The inside 2 lanes then will continue and take you down in front of the terminal. And of course, that would be the new garage, the new section of the garage that will be constructed in 2023 off to the left. This would be traveling south on Fluid Drive. Again, it depicts the loop and the come under to enter the garage parking area. One of the things that we are in the process of doing, besides updating the terminal area forecast, is well, we brought our owner's representative team on board. And the owner's representative team represents the airport in all things on this construction project. We don't have enough staff of our own, and you don't want to hire staff permanently, so you outsource it to consultants who have some expertise in it. But in that gold box there, they actually looked at the inflation factor going forward up through 2025, actually. That gold box seems to have scored one more there. But you inflate from the 2018 numbers that we had, and it's $82 million is what inflation has done to this projects thus far. And then looking at midpoint construction, which is estimated to be 2025, it inflates another $97 million. So it's $180 million that almost $190 million of inflation on this for every year that we postpone. The price tag is increasing. And so you can see it's gone from 403 million up to 583 million. In order to close that funding gap, we've been out looking for some regional financial support. This is a result of conversations we had with the state of Iowa and some preliminary conversations that we had with the FAA. And they suggested that if we could get regional support, that it would go a long way toward accessing some discretionary dollars. So you can see the list there. We started with those communities in Polk County, and then just listed Dallas, Jasper, Astoria, and Warren counties and cities, hoping that we could meet with them all at one time. I will tell you that we have 19 resolutions in the file, totaling $28.5 million of monies committed, assuming that we close the funding gap on the rest of the project. So that's kind of unheard of, that many communities would step forward with that much money. Since I'm talking to Ames, I will also tell you that Story County and cities are the last one on the list. We have reached out to the Ames city manager and asked if they would help convene a meeting of Nevada and some of the larger cities within Story County there for us, but we haven't heard back. So we will be coming your way asking for some financial assistance to the point that we can. This little town of Alleman, for example, 452 population of 452 people there at $10 per capita. It was only $4,500, but that's a huge impact to their budget, to their annual budget. But they made the commitment, and that just surprises me. Of course, Polk County and Des Moines are both committed 10 million each, as they should. That's where we reside and have the they would have the biggest impact from the terminal. Private investment is estimated to be at 18 million. That's Signature is building on the south side of the field. Signature is the general aviation facility, the general aviation terminal. They do the fueling on the field. They're one of two organizations that do fueling on the field. Out of our own reserves and our own bonding capacity at the Airport Authority, we estimated we'll have about $224 million into the project. We have done a preliminary analysis of our bonding capacity, and it's about $130 million, meaning that we will end up putting in about $100 million of our own cash reserves as we go forward. The regional and municipalities and counties on that deck that I just talked about, we anticipated maybe $34 million from them, leaving $307 million to ask the state and our federal, the FAA federal organizations for. You are, I'm sure, aware of the infrastructure bill that was passed. In that bill, there's funding for airports and specifically for airport terminals. There's two different pools of money. Out of the first pool, we know that we will receive over the next 5 years $27 million, so that comes up off that 307. And then there's a competitive portion of that where you can go in and compete for dollars, and the contribution from the local municipalities and counties speaks volumes when we get in front of the FAA on that competitive side, that there's financial buy-in, and it shows real buy-in, real need to the FAA on that. So we're hoping that helps put us in a position on those competitive sides, as it does at the state level as well. Again, the escalation cost of Des Moines continues to, the escalation cost of inflation continues to drive the budget higher. We think the sooner, well, we know the sooner we get it done, the cheaper it'll be because of that inflation factor. We also know that generally there's a correction after an inflation period that you see a correction. You could almost go into a deflation period. I don't know when that would occur. I don't know for sure that it would occur. So the sooner that we can get the terminal designed and built, the better off we are financially. The project timeline, if we close the funding gap, would speed up. Down there at the bottom, you see the new terminal will be completed at 2026, in large part because a lot of the money that's being committed by the communities or the state would be the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Those monies have to be spent by 2026, which means it would have to be substantial. The terminal would have to be substantially complete. We can do that. We can make that. Our original schedule was moving in 2028, but we can speed it up. We are doing interviews for the architectural firm here on March 24th, and we'll select that firm and have them start on design immediately after we get the contract negotiated. So 2 years for design and then 2 years for construction. So we can make that 2026 timeline if we can close the funding gap. With that, I mean, I know that I went through that slide deck very quickly and threw a lot of information out there, but I would entertain any questions or discussion anyone might have.
It looks like you've got some questions in the chat box.
And so the first one, Light Catch Des Moines, the Ames Convention and Visitors Bureau is tasked with bringing groups and visitors to Iowa. One of our challenges is ground transportation from Des Moines Airport to Ames. The pandemic has worsened this problem with fewer rental cars and fewer shuttle options. Do you assist in the management for the ground transportation from the airport, do you see this improving? And it's very, very accurate. It is a national issue. So the first thing that happened there was when Uber and Lyft came on the scene, most of us, at least partially, abandoned taxi service and started using Uber and Lyft. And consequently, a lot of taxi companies went out of business. Those that stayed in business got rid of vehicles and downsized their staff, downsized the travelers. Of course, with the rapid increase in leisure travel on the backside of the pandemic here, as we recover from the pandemic, people are upset with the taxi drivers because, or with taxis, the taxi service, because there's not enough of them and there's a wait period. Uber and Lyft drivers have not come back into ground transportation like they were prior to the pandemic. I think a lot of them probably have figured out that they weren't making a lot of money by the time they looked at the depreciation on their vehicles. Couple that with when the pandemic hit, the rental cars, the one thing they had to sell to stay solvent was their vehicles. Now with this chip issue from China, they're trying to buy vehicles. They actually have cash to buy vehicles and they can't get them in fast enough. So there is a real ground transportation issue. We do not manage ground transportation as the airport authority. We have contracts that allow ground transportation service providers to provide that service. So we do have with taxi operators, with Uber and Lyft, we have agreements, but we don't actually manage them. I hope that it improves. We just talked about this again at the last board meeting, and the fact that it is a national issue. Everybody's in the same boat on this, and certainly I hope that it does improve. We don't want people stranded in the terminal here. We want to get them to their final destination, assist them getting there as best we can. I like the ease of getting through security by using just your driver's license pictured ID. Why do we not find this practice implemented at more airports? You will see that implemented at other airports as the TSA gets those rolled out. The other thing that you're going to see in the future is photo or facial identification, which is your identification just off of a photo. I will tell if you travel internationally, Customs and Border Protection has a photo database already, and you're probably in it. If you have a driver's license, or if you've been to Vegas or some other locations, they've got your photo. So as you approach screening, what will happen is your picture will be taken about 20 times just as you walk toward it. If there's nothing that flags you, it'll flash green and you'll walk right on through screening and off to your gate. If it flags you, you'll be pulled aside for additional screening. So screening is changing. And as far as seeing that quick just off your driver's license, sliding into the reader pulls up. What the TSO, the Transportation Security Officer, sees, they see your destination, your boarding pass. You just don't have to show it to them, and they see that just off of your driver's license. So it is coming, and you will see more of that. With the airport growth, projections are more nonstop destinations being added to provide greater options for international travel. Yes. We do not have the federal inspection services. We don't have all of them here in Des Moines. We do have customs, and with customs, that allows general aviation traffic to fly from wherever they're coming from directly back into Des Moines. So if you think about a Cortiva, when it's winter here in the northern hemisphere, it's growing season in the southern hemisphere, and they do fly down to South America, and they fly directly back to Des Moines here to pass through customs when they come back. When you think about Principal Financial, they're a global industry, fly all over the world, and from wherever they are, they can fly directly back here to Des Moines and check through. And that's what makes us an international airport. But for commercial travel, you have to have not just customs, but you have to have immigrations and Department of Agriculture and some other inspectors, and we don't have them here. We do have some interest from some airlines for international flights, specifically Cancun. Cancun is number 35 on our top destinations out of Des Moines. So through the winter time, you could fill an airplane probably 2 flights a week going to Cancun and do it seasonal. Coming home, it would have to make a stop someplace else to get through those federal inspection services. So we desperately want to increase the size of the terminal so that we can put those facilities in the terminal. That is the answer. And one of the things that we're looking for and chasing. Future funding and grants or loans from the recent federal infrastructure initiative. I think the question there is are there future grants and loans? And we hope so. If you ever heard me present before, and I'm sure some of you have, you heard me talking about passenger facility charges. Passenger facility charge is a charge that's approved by Congress. It's capped by Congress, but the money never goes to Congress. So right now it's capped at $4.50. That cap was set in year 2000. As an industry, airports have been asking for that to be raised to $8.50. A couple of years ago, when it was calculated, that was parity. Gave us the same purchasing power. Today has $4.50 did back in the year 2000. The airlines opposed that because they have to collect those dollars. They get a small administration fee. It's about 15 cents today that they get to keep out of it. And then they have to remit it right back to the airport where that ticket was purchased through. And you think, but it still benefits them. Why would they oppose that? Well, I will tell you that 4 airlines control 80% of all the domestic flights, all the domestic passengers in the United States. That's United, American, Delta, and Southwest. When we start talking about a $4 increase in the PFC, there were approximately, back in 2019, 890,000 passenger enplanements in the United States. You take that times $4 and you're at roughly $3.6 billion. 80% of that going to 4 airlines. That's a lot of dollars that they collect and handle that they can't keep. And it would go directly to their bottom line if they could. So that's the biggest opposition that airlines have to an increase in the passenger facility charge. That would solve most of the construction or most of the congestion problems at airports around the United States, if that were in fact increased. But the airlines have a very strong lobbying group. And with the bill, the bilateral infrastructure bill that we received, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed, I'm pretty sure that someone's going to stand up and say, we just gave airports in total $20 billion, and now you want an increase in PFCs as well. So I don't know what future funding looks like as far as grants and loans available for airports once we get past this initial bill. But I will also tell you the bill, the BIL, is nothing more than a down payment on the infrastructure needs in the United States. It literally is about 20% of the needs across all modes of transportation. So, what is your most memorable flight as a pilot? Well, generally it's when something went wrong. Probably the most memorable, I was in the right seat, so I was co-pilot on this particular flight, but we didn't really matter which seat you were in. You just traded off legs, and so the chief pilot was actually flying the flight, and he had a problem the lines on runways mean something, and even to a greater degree than on the highways, you need to follow those lines and pay attention to them. And one of the things that just always bothered me was we'd pull out on the runway and we'd be left or right of the center line, and you always wanted to be on the center line in case something happened. On this particular flight, we were landing at Monroe, Wisconsin, which the runway is only, as I recall, it's 100 feet wide. And we landed to the left side of the runway, and we blew the left main on touchdown. That left main tire blew. And there was a ravine off to the left side, and we were being sucked off toward that ravine. We had 3 passengers on board, and we managed to keep the airplane on the runway. We never left the runway. But there were a few words exchanged after that flight between I and the chief pilot about why I wasn't going with him anymore unless he started taking off and landing on the center line. And I will tell you, from that point forward, at least when I was flying with him, we took off and landed on the center line. So that's what I remember the most, mostly because I wasn't sure we were going to survive it. So I don't see any other questions. And so if there's any.
I think there was one question above the question that you first started with, or how many employees are actually on the Des Moines Airport payroll and what is their annual budget? Did you see that one?
I see it now, yes. So our total operating budget, our total revenue budget is $48 million. Counting me, there's 59 employees on the airport authority payroll. The biggest department is what we call field maintenance, and those are the folks that do they do all the mowing of the grass. But we staff that department for snow removal. That's our biggest requirement of those folks. That when it snows, safety is priority. Well, safety is always priority. But a snow event is the closest thing that we have to an emergency typically, and hopefully that's the closest thing we ever have to an emergency. But in order to stay open, we run 24 hours a day, and so that's what decides the staffing there. But then we have other people that are here 24 hours a day. Our operations staff is here 24 hours a day. We have accountants, we have facilities engineers, we have IT folks. So in total, there's 59 people employed by the airport authority. In total at the airport, at last count that I saw, there was 1,500 people employed at the airport, and that would include the folks at FedEx, UPS, and Amazon Prime. It would include all the airline people, the rental car folks, but that would be the total employment out there.
Okay, and then a couple more questions. How much do taxes add to our ticket price? Now we're back down to the original ending. Kent asks, how much do taxes add to our ticket price?
The current on those that goes into the Airport and Airways Trust Fund, the current tax rate is 7.5%. So 7.5% of the cost of the ticket itself goes into that Airport and Airways Trust Fund, and that funds that is the largest pool of money going into that trust fund. On average, on any given year, there's about $15 billion generated for the Airport and Airways Trust Fund. That was originally established back in 1958, and then there's been amendments to it. But most of that money was for airport and airways development. That's what it was supposed to be used for. Today, $9 billion out of that fund goes in for operating of the FAA, the air traffic control towers, and those types of things, which that was never its intent. Again, if those dollars were used as they were intended back when that law was established, there probably wouldn't be an infrastructure issue, but it's not. It's siphoned off like everything else. Congress sees that pool of money and they go after it for other purposes. So what is the status of military use of the airport? The Air Force still has the lease over here on property, and their mission today is a remotely piloted mission. So the F-16s left, but in place of the F-16s, the Air Guard was awarded this remotely piloted mission, and none of the drones that they're flying come in and out of Des Moines. They're actually launched, most of them overseas, and once launched and they get to a certain altitude, then it's handed off to a pilot here in Des Moines, and they can fly that drone, keep it airborne for 36 hours just off the computer from someplace here in Des Moines. So that's their mission today. I know that they are constantly seeking a manned aircraft mission as well here in Des Moines, the Air Force is. And then they also sublet a portion of the ramp area for the Army Reserve helicopters to be brought down here in Des Moines. There's some construction that has to occur before they can do that, some maintenance facilities, and actually some additional storage facilities. But all those helicopters that are in Boone, Iowa, are eventually scheduled to come down here to Des Moines. Assuming they get the construction dollars that they need to build. I think primarily the maintenance facility is what they have to build. So, but they're here, and their lease goes to 2060. They have a lease that it goes out to 2060. The price of parking at the airport seems to have gone up significantly in the past few years. Why? Well, the last increase before, we did just increase January 1, and the primary reason for increasing on January 1 is with the shortage of employees, we needed to raise the wages across the board in parking. Now, we have a parking management company. They manage it, but we reimburse them for all the expenses so that the airport is either at risk or the benefit of the parking operation. The risk factor would come if you think back to 9/11 when parking lots were empty, or even April 5th of 2000, our parking lots sat empty, and so none of that revenue was coming in. But we have increased the wages of the shuttle drivers and increased the wages of the cashiers, as well as the management folks themselves down here with our parking company, just to make sure that we get the employees that we need. So it's just an inflation factor. The long and short of it is that is just trying to keep up with inflation on our rates and charges on parking. The last time I was at the airport, the long-term lot on the east side of Fleur, south of the Holiday Inn, was closed. Are there plans to reopen it? Yes. As spring break, in spring break of 2019, we got down to between 300 and 400 total spaces left on the airport, and that's in all of the lots. So a parking lot is basically full when it gets about 90% full, because you don't have time as a passenger to search for those empty spaces. So with 400 spaces in 2019, which we didn't anticipate that kind of surge during spring break, which is our heaviest parking period, we quickly added 1,200 spaces on the south side of the airfield. And with those spaces today, we can close that lot across Fleur that you're talking about, and the shuttles don't have to cross Fleur that way. It's a safety issue, as well as it speeds the route up. In other words, they can make a full route loop much quicker than if they have to sit and wait for traffic on Fleur. Having said that, we're coming into spring break. There's a pent-up demand. We know there's a pent-up demand, and I'm quite certain that we will have that lot across Fleur opened up probably by the end of next week, and we'll have vehicles in there by the end of next week. With mask mandates easing across the country, when do you see airlines easing these mandates as well? Well, it's, the airlines, the mandate to wear masks in all transportation terminals, for that matter, on any mode of transportation as well, comes from basically it's presidential mandate right now that the Transportation Security Administration took then and made it, it's a security directive. It's not necessarily regulation because it didn't go through Congress, but it is a security directive and enforceable by the TSA. I was just on a call before this meeting, and right now that mandate is scheduled to go into sunset on March 18th. There is an expectation that it will be extended and probably extended through all of spring break, or at least up through Easter. And once we get past Easter, then there's a feeling that there's enough push, enough momentum to get rid of that mask mandate that it may go away at that point. But that's really dependent in part on the CDC and the recommendation that they would give to President Biden and or to the TSA. So I don't have a hard date on that other than March 18th is what it's currently scheduled, and pretty sure it will get extended. And unless I'm missing one, I don't see any more questions.
I think you got them all. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Really
Thank-
appreciate your time today. That was very informative. We were lucky to, we got the Zoom thing down. So it's nice that we're able to get some different speakers in like you. So we really appreciate your time today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple announcements today. Next week, Rotary, we are actually, don't forget, we're on the stage at STY Stevens. So again, thank you, Tammy, for that. And then the week after that, we are back at the Alumni Center. So we are getting back to our in-person. We've been online for a couple weeks now. So don't forget, next week we are on the stage at CY Stevens. Also, I know that you guys see my Iowa State shirt tonight. Big game tonight against Baylor. If we win tonight, we're the Big 12 champions. So if you guys don't have anything going on, and knock on wood, you want to see some nets getting cut down tonight, the game is at 6 p.m. and it will be awesome. So go Cyclones. And now, without further ado, the four-way test. Of the things we do and say, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.